somewhere. So it is a cost which is borne by shipowner as far as transshipment is concerned. So when you consider THC and this charge, that is not sufficient. The transshipment charges which he pays from his freight, if you compare that with what he pays from when he goes to transship the cargo in other port, why he tranships the cargo is only to save his cost. So if you consider that, then only right answer can come. Similarly, if you go to importer and exporter, how much he pays if he imports a cargo from X country to Y country?
We are getting the point. Can we discuss this after this session? Because we are running out of time and the next team is waiting.
Hello, I am Virendra Kumar from Reliance. I wanted two queries. Are you recommending something for improvement of coastal shipping? Another question I wanted to know was that will your recommendations include only facilities or expansion of ports, present gateway ports, or your study would also include certain other strategic locations where better draft is available and subject to providing inland logistics? Those could be developed on priority.
We have looked at coastal shipping. In fact, in all commodities, wherever there is a movement of cargo and what kind of growth is going to take place. We have not separated it. It's part of every cargo forecast for a port, because port is exit cargo, overseas cargo, as well as the coastal cargo. So we have factored in coastal, but we have not examined from a shipping angle. We have looked at from a port angle. The aggregate port traffic is basically an exit cargo plus the coastal cargo. Now, we have not really gone into details of whether within a port cluster we should set up capacities at point A or point B, whether it is a deep draft or lesser draft. We have said so much capacity is required, because technology-wise also there are so many solutions which are possible. Lightweight is one solution. We have been working as consultants, and we found there are innumerable choices, and one has to always look at the composite cost. So there have been cases in which lightweight solutions are cheaper than the direct berthing solutions in a deep draft solution. Many times there are other kind of solutions where you do part lightweight, part direct berthing. So we've not gone to that detail, but we have said this much capacity is required, this is what number of ports are, and this is the total demand of the traffic. Yeah.
Maybe a food for thought. I was just wondering, at the end of all this, is there a need to have 12 ports, major ports? Because in view of the state ports now coming up, growing up, can you close down 6 ports for that matter? Or close down a riverine port, Calcutta? You know, classic example. Or the merger of Mumbai Port Trust and JNPT, things like that. What will be the effect on the supply and demand position? So this is a question of should we increase the major ports? And since the state ports have been now encouraged to increase state ports, there is a need, I think, to reconsider the growth of the major ports. This is just a food for thought, not for you to answer.
I would request Mr. Jain is with us of IPA. He will be more than happy to answer this.
I just want to clarify that as a part of this study, this was not within the scope, neither is desirable to say whether a port should come in location A, location B, whether 2 ports should be there or 3 ports should be there. That's not possible. What we've done is, what is the demand today? What is the capacity today? What is the demand that we expect 5 years down the line, or 10 years down the line, in different scenarios, up case, base case, where it's likely to come. But actually, which ports will come up will basically depend upon number of factors, and I don't think anybody will be in a position to predict when the market forces. Tomorrow, if an investor comes, he will not go by our recommendation of which should be location A or B, he will go with. So this particular aspect of what exact number of ports should be there, should there be major port, should there be minor port, should it be location A and location B. These are contentious, so nor is possible either for any body or consultant to give this sort of.
But so my only view is that let's not have a close view on this. If suppose we close down 2 ports on the east coast and 2 ports on the west coast, we still manage to cope with the trade.
Whether we close down 2 ports or 1 port or 3 ports, that could be a specific area to study. That can be studied. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying as a part of this, we've not done this. What we intend to do is that how many ports should be there? Should there be 12 major ports or 13 major ports or 11?
Thank you very much. I hand over the stage to IDFC feedback for their part.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon everybody. Thanks a lot Ramesh for outlining the demand-supply related issues. Feedback and IDFC have been working on the regulatory policy, finance and institutional framework to actually see what are some of the interventions and facilitative steps that we need to take in the context of a sector as we all clearly recognize is transforming. And what do we do moving ahead, specifically on policy, regulatory issues and financing to actually see how we can enhance the development of the sector. Very clearly today, I think the port sector is standing on a crossroads. We are seeing huge potential moving ahead. The demand growth forecasts are all extremely buoyant. Container traffic has been growing at about 15%. One may disagree on what the extent of the growth moving forward is, but clearly we can all agree that the growth is going to be fairly aggressive. It can be 15%, it can go up to 20%. I think it's also in our hands in terms of what we do to facilitate and enable this growth to happen. Overall, the sector is growing at about 10%. There has been a lot of talk of directing finance from the private sector into development of infrastructure, and in the context of infrastructure, specifically in ports. In that context, therefore, what actually, in a market scenario where you have demand growth, what should the policy and financial framework actually lead us to? You have an environment where PSP is possible. There is clearly an ability to pay for services, and there's an ability to track that service to a direct user. Demand, as we've seen, is not really an issue moving forward. Specifically, port projects are fairly contractable. One can lay out what the terms are, what the conditions are, what the obligations of various parties involved in the process are going to be. It makes them very contractable. There are a number of players with the appropriate capabilities who exist and who have also shown interest in the past as well as in current projects in PPP. There has been a preference for private sector services where private sector and public sector have coexisted. Part is historical, and we need to understand why and maybe capitalize on that in terms of encouraging more private investment into the space. Very clearly, there is a huge risk of not creating this capacity. The number outlined in the previous presentation was about $200 billion. The number can vary, but the magnitude of not creating this capacity, the magnitude of risk is going to be fairly high. Clearly, therefore, the sector has huge potential, and if we don't develop it, an equally high economic downside of a lack of development. What do we therefore do? What are some of the imperatives that are going to drive policy in this space? Clearly, there are issues on operational efficiencies, there are issues on connectivity, there are also issues on ability of port trusts to actually manage issues, and ports to manage issues which are out of their immediate hinterland. We've traditionally viewed ports as boxes within themselves. I think clearly we need to start looking at ports as elements of a larger logistics chain and direct policy and financing towards supporting a logistics framework of which ports are a part, rather than view ports as one independent, isolated piece by themselves. If we start viewing ports as part of the transportation sector, I think our ability to make more projects happen, our ability to create a facilitative policy framework is going to be far greater. In this situation, what should funding and policy be directed at? Clearly, one, to help facilitate increased PSP if that is the objective of the government. Well, some of the statements are obvious. You need to build a facilitative framework. You need to ease a lot of approval procedures. I had somebody talk about issues on land acquisition, on environment. These are clearly huge problems in the current context. I think one of the other issues we're going to have to look at is, can we direct public funding towards